Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Dubai International Air Chiefs Conference in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, the 9th gathering of this extraordinary event that brings air chiefs from the region as well as their international counterparts together to talk about future requirements, technologies, concepts of operations, and more. We're a media partner of this great event that comes just before the Dubai International Air Show, where our coverage is sponsored by Leonardo DRS, and it's our honor to be talking to Danny Sebright, the president of the US-UAE Business Council. Danny, great seeing you again.
Nice to see you too, Vago. How are you?
Fantastic. It certainly is an interesting time for the region. Let's start with Iran. Washington has had kind of a muscular message. We saw a little bit of that on display in some of the comments that were made in the room. Whereas if you talk to UAE officials, they're really looking for a more peaceful resolution to the challenge. Talk to us a little bit about some of the conversations you've had, the perceptions, and sort of what people should expect next.
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't think anyone in the region today wants a conflict and is looking for a conflict. And if I had to sort of assess it, I would say that Washington does have a very muscular approach, and Washington is trying to crack down on the Iranians on a number of levels in a number of ways with sanctions and everything else. But I think there's some pretty close coordination with the UAE, perhaps to give them a chance to push on the sort of peaceful approach with the Iranians and see if there's an opportunity for dialogue there that bears fruit. And I think that's probably a very nice sort of tit for tat, if you will, lack of a better expression, for the way Washington and the Gulf countries might be working, trying to deal with the Iranians right now. Carrot and stick, having Washington push the Iranians with the stick, and trying to have the Emiratis and maybe a few others come in and try to bring them along in a positive way. I think we're all worried about what was announced in the last few days about the Iranians stepping back from their commitments under the JCPOA and starting full-scale enrichment again. And I think that is on everyone's minds right now, and is part of the dialogue that's going on.
We heard from General Goldfein, the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, the 21st Chief, and he mentioned the importance of Qatar in defending the United Arab Emirates. He said, look, defense doesn't have to be just here. It's actually smarter to defend from Qatar as well as it is from Bahrain, for example, for interception of missiles, given that a ballistic missile will only take minutes to get from Iran over the Gulf to get here. But the relationship between Doha and Abu Dhabi do remain rather strained. Talk to us about what's going on behind the scenes to try to improve it. We talked to Major General Al-Hashmi, Abdullah Al-Hashmi, the Assistant Undersecretary of the Ministry of Defense. He said, look, the demands still remain in place, but we're still family. We look forward to having a very positive relationship. He talked about the soccer tournament that's going on there now when the UAE national team is in Doha. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on and how to resolve this dialogue to ensure that the whole region puts a common front together, because the Qataris aren't all that comfortable with what's going on in Iran either.
Correct. So I would say from the American perspective, and given where you sit is where you stand, and our base at Al Udeid in Qatar is incredibly important to regional defense and incredibly important to our interests in the region. That matters. From a missile defense standpoint, the geometry, as General Goldfein said, matters. And stepping back from it, having a missile defense system that's based in Qatar, looking out over this region when you're dealing with a missile that might say be coming from Yemen, gives you much more of an ability with a standoff capability to try to intercept that missile. So he's absolutely right. Regionally and politically, the Saudis and the Emiratis, to my understanding, have not stepped back at all from their 13 demands of what they want the Qataris to do with regard to stopping incitement on Al Jazeera, dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood, all of these sorts of things. However, there is a realization, I think, with all parties, that they have to slowly start getting on with it. And as most things go in this part of the world, business and the demands of business are going to increasingly play an important role and impact on how this situation might resolve itself. I see with the World Cup, with the Dubai Expo coming in 2020 and the World Cup coming in 2022, more pressure, more opportunities to relax things at least around the edges, and perhaps have some business, some air routes, some things like that be opened again and relaxed a bit. I don't think the key political demands are going to go away. The key political requests, if you will, are going to go away anytime soon. And in large measure, from a political standpoint, I think it's going to be business as usual. I don't see a big, huge breakthrough coming, but I do see maybe some loosening around the edges, if you will.
One of the things about business, we're at the Dubai International Air Show. Obviously, United Arab Emirates is considered a close American ally, has some very, very sophisticated U.S. weapon systems. There are concerns about the Yemen campaign. We talked a little bit about that to General al-Hashmi as well, talking about, lessons learned from, and his point was when, everybody around the world sees the UAE flag, that it should stand for something positive and for good. And he highlighted the construction efforts and everything that have happened in Yemen. We said it was an important mission to accomplish, but we also believe in trying to help Yemen as much as we can at this point. There are those in Congress who are concerned about it, but a lot of major weapons cases have been cleared. What's next in the relationship and the clearance process when it comes to the United Arab Emirates, and is that different from what will happen with the Saudis, for example?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack in what you just said, and very, very important. And what I would say is the following. Yemen has played a major part with regard to what's going on in our Congress and the blocking of some of the arms transfers or sales that have happened both with the Saudis and the Emiratis. The Saudis and the Emiratis took some key decisions 6 months or so ago that they needed to start pulling back in different ways in Yemen. I think the Emiratis a little bit further along in that process, obviously. This was based on what was going on the ground and the situation there as much as anything else, but with a clear understanding that they have a political problem in Washington that needed to be resolved, that needed to be improved, especially in the context in Washington right now between Republicans and Democrats and the infighting that's going on in our own political system. I think the Emiratis have come to the conclusion that they must pull back in Yemen. They must try to help rebuild Yemen. They must take a different road forward that under Griffith's plan of bringing the parties together and creating a new provisional government. That is the priority is Paul Griffith's plan, and there's actually progress being made there. So I think we're going to see in Congress a second chance, a second look at the UAE as being a responsible partner and player in this region again, the way that it used to be before Yemen raised its ugly head. Saudi and there's always we review weapons sales in this region based on Israel's qualitative edge. And we have always, since I was in government, always evaluated release to these countries as a block based on how we would look at how the release would affect Israel's potential security. I'm not sure that's going to change very much in the future. Maybe around the edges again, but I think the way we evaluate it again against Israel's qualitative edge is not going to change.
But if you look at it, the qualitative military advantage standard that was used was at a time when there was a little bit more of a confrontational relationship
Correct.
between this region and particularly the Saudis with the Palestinian issue and other things. Whereas now there is an enormous amount of congruity and coordination. Literally in anticipation, should things go very badly, everybody's operating the same airplanes, and if you just put some spray paint on it, you have no idea whether or not that's an Israeli F-16 or an F-16 from any other nation in this region. Talk to us a little.
The enemy of your enemy is your friend, okay? And I think there's a huge realization in Riyadh, in Abu Dhabi, in Tel Aviv, in some other capitals in the region, that Iran is the ultimate bad guy, that everyone has to come together to deal with this threat. That said, we're not quite there yet. Under the radar and behind the scenes, there's been a lot of progress. There's all kinds of consultations going on. We're going to have an Israeli pavilion at Expo 2020 here in Dubai in 6 months. I mean, there's amazing developments that are happening. We're on the cusp, in my view, of a big new development in the region. But with regards to American weapon release and technology release, we're just not quite there yet. We're ready for it. I think it's coming. But we're not. I don't think we're going to see some big announcements at this air show that are going to change the dynamic.
And let me ask you about partnership, which is one of your important goals as part of the organization. We have Edge, which is an agglomeration of a lot of the companies that were rolled out, I think, one or two Dubais and IDEXs ago. But there are a lot of companies, and the UAE has this iterative approach of continue to drive the ball forward in advancing the state of technological play in the country. Anybody who has spent time here is stunned that when they come back every year or every 2 years, it's massively different each time you come back. And each one of and they're not willing to fail in order to be able to drive the ball forward. Talk to us about Edge. Talk to us about what the partnership situation is, because when it goes all the way from AI to space to any other field, the UAE very much is looking to try to engage and get partners to do that. Where are we? Where are we on all the technical mechanics that make that possible, given U.S. intellectual property, the whole ball that goes with that?
Sure. Edge is a culmination of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed's goal to drive efficiencies in the indigenous Emirati defense market. And it's also a push to create more ability to partner, to create IP here jointly with American and European and other partners. We haven't talked about China at all. We have to talk about that. We have to worry about that. But Edge is an effort, is an objective, if you will, that brings together a number of different Emirati indigenous companies and capabilities to drive efficiencies, to provide overall leadership in a number of these verticals, to coordinate and cooperate and take out some of the fluff, if you will, that might have been there before when they were in different pots and working in different capabilities. This will help, in my view, in the long run with partnerships with American companies.
Let's talk about both China and Russia. China has been very active in this region, obviously, as part of its global approach. Russia has been very, very active as well in terms of weapon sales to the Saudis, as well as Saudi Arabia looking to the Chinese, certainly for unmanned systems that did rankle Washington a bit. Talk to us a little bit about what the role of these two countries is in these countries at a time when there's a little bit of a concern about what American leadership is going to be like, because it looks like some countries are hedging their bets a bit.
Yeah, let's talk about China a little bit if I can. The Chinese are being very aggressive about spreading their business ties throughout the broader region. With the Belt and Road Initiative, a lot of this activity is to bring in low-cost financing for projects and sort of then tie the companies down, if you will, tie the countries down into the projects. The Emiratis don't need Chinese money. But what the Emiratis do need is partnerships in areas of technology, especially areas where they can't get it from other traditional partners, because we, the Europeans, don't have it, as in the case with us with 5G. We don't have a commercial 5G capability, or we won't or cannot give it to them yet. And the Emiratis in particular are very much focused on getting the capabilities that they think they need for their legitimate self-defense needs. And if they can't, their preferred partner is America, is the United States. Preferred, bar none. Everyone I talk to says that. But if they can't get it from us or the Europeans, they're going to go to where they can get it, even though it might not be the best. It's better than nothing when they think they have a real need, a real requirement. Russia, to me, is a little bit different. Russia's more focused on the Levant. Obviously, Putin made a historic trip to Riyadh recently, a historic trip here, visits. But the Russian connection is I think more about energy, if I could say that, and sort of how you coordinate on some of the energy flows and the way those flows are changing. There's a defense aspect to it, but I don't think the Russians are out trying to sell as much of their sophisticated technology here as the Chinese are really pushing on the commercial space.
And last question, how does the U.S. Abrupt pullout from Syria, does that change the perception of the United States in this region at all?
Absolutely. How can we be, the next time there's a crisis, the next time, as we say in the Defense Department, the balloon goes up, in this region, how can anyone here take us seriously and think we will be there as their partner and friend when this is the way we have treated the Kurds in northern Syria? I mean, it's just unconscionable, and I've heard from everyone quietly behind the scenes. We talked about Obama's red line. Well, we've had a red line here that we've stepped away from as well, and it will affect the way we are seen in the region going forward.
Danny Sebright, the president of the US-UAE Business Council. Danny, it's always a pleasure. I hope you have a very successful Dubai Air Show.
Thank you so much, my friend, and thanks for the great interview.